My name is Haley Grant. I'm 32 years old, and 2 weeks before my wedding, I learned my fiancé might have gotten his ex-girlfriend pregnant. And she wanted to put his name on the birth certificate because, quote, it's more meaningful. That was the moment my whole life cracked in half. I work as a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company in Pennsylvania. I started there right out of college, sweating on the warehouse floor as an associate, counting boxes and scanning pallets until my eyes blurred. Then inventory management, then operations, finally coordination. It's not glamorous, but it's solid. I make $68,000 a year, own a modest 2-bedroom condo I bought 5 years ago, and drive a paid-off 2016 Honda Accord with 89,000 miles that runs like a dream. Nothing flashy, but my bills get paid on time, and aside from the mortgage, I'm debt-free. At least I was smart with money. Just not with men. I'd been engaged to Caleb Morris for 8 months, together for 3 years. We met at my friend Troy's 4th of July party back in 2020. Caleb showed up in a faded band tee and jeans, hair still damp from a rushed shower, grinning like he already knew half the room. He was friends with Troy's girlfriend back then. I was there to drink cheap beer and forget about my ex who'd called me boring for choosing overtime over spontaneous weekend trips. Caleb laughed at one of Troy's bad jokes, and the whole patio kind of pivoted toward him. He had that kind of easy, magnetic energy that made you feel like the sun had just come out. We ended up talking for 3 hours straight on the back steps while fireworks went off in the distance. Music, terrible high school teachers, nightmare bosses, everything. He asked questions and actually listened. The first year was good. He'd come over after work, we'd cook dinner together, argue playfully over which movie to watch, fall asleep halfway through something we both claimed to love. He'd ask about my job, and when I launched into rants about delayed containers and nightmare customs holds, he'd nod like it was fascinating instead of mind-numbing. He made me feel appreciated in a way my last boyfriend never did. That ex had told me I was too intense about work, like having ambition was a character flaw. Caleb was different, or so I thought. By year 2, we decided it made sense for him to move into my condo. His lease was ending, I already owned, and the numbers worked. He pitched in $800 a month toward utilities and groceries while I covered the mortgage, HOA, property taxes. We split the rest of our expenses about 60-40 since I made $18,000 more a year. Caleb worked as a dental hygienist at a family practice downtown, about $50,000 annually with benefits. Not bad, but he complained constantly about difficult patients, the demanding dentist, having to work a couple Saturdays each month. I listened, offered advice, rubbed his shoulders while he vented about someone's plaque. Somewhere in there, I co-signed his leased 2021 Mazda CX-5 when the dealership balked at his 620 credit score. Monthly payment of $380 that he technically covered, but my credit was on the hook if he ever slipped. In hindsight, that should have been my first big flashing red light, financially tying myself to someone who'd already proven he could be careless. But we were in love, planning a future, or that's what I told myself. The wedding was set for May 14th. We'd been planning for 6 months. Barn-style venue 40 minutes outside the city, string lights, mismatched chairs, the whole Pinterest fantasy. $4,500 deposit, non-refundable. Caterer at $3,800 for 120 guests. Photographer at $1,500. DJ at $800. Florist at $1,200. My dress was $2,200. My parents insisted on paying for that. His suit rental, $300. Invitations, decor, all the tiny, stupid, it's only $100 purchases that add up to another grand without blinking. Total budget hovered around $18,000, with his parents pitching in $5,000. The remaining $14,800, my savings. Money I'd been putting aside for years. Money that, as I sat here telling you this, felt like I'd piled it in a neat stack and handed it to a bonfire. On paper, we were perfect. 2 stable jobs, cozy condo, wedding on the horizon, long-term plans to buy a house in a good school district, maybe start trying for kids in a couple of years. We were the couple people envied in holiday photos. But the cracks started showing about 6 months before the wedding. Little things. The way Caleb would get defensive when I asked about his day. I'd say, "How was work?" And instead of the usual rant about Dr. Palmer or the kid who bit him, he'd stiffen. "Why do you need to know every detail, Haley? Can I just be tired without giving a report?" He'd say it like a joke, but with an edge that made me back off. His phone habits changed too. When he first moved in, his phone lived face up on the coffee table, abandoned on the kitchen counter while he showered. Sometimes I had to remind him to grab it before bed. Then, gradually, it glued itself to his hand. We'd be on the couch watching TV, his phone would buzz, and he'd tilt it away, thumb moving quickly, then place it face down. When I asked who he was texting, it was always someone from work, or just a friend, never names, always vague. He started having more late nights, too. Drinks with the team, someone needed to vent about their marriage. Traffic was insane. Girls' nights in the original story turned into his co-worker hangouts that somehow lasted until 2 in the morning. Every explanation was plausible. Every explanation was just believable enough that I didn't push, because I didn't want to be that girlfriend, the paranoid one who projects old wounds onto a new partner. My friend Troy tried to warn me around Christmas. We were at his place watching football, grease from the wings still on our fingers. "How's the wedding stuff?" he asked. "Good. Expensive, but good," I said. He hesitated. "Caleb still weird with his phone?" I frowned. "What do you mean, still?" At my Halloween party, he was texting someone and full-on hid his screen when I walked by. Like, turned his whole body. It was off. "He was probably texting about the proposal surprise stuff," I said too quickly. "Maybe arranging something for me. You're being dramatic." Troy gave me a look. "Whatever you say, just keep your eyes open, okay?" I should have listened, but I was already in too deep. Deposits paid, dress altered, invitations ordered. It was easier to call myself paranoid than to ask why my fiancé couldn't leave his phone unattended for 5 minutes. 3 weeks before the wedding, mid-April, Caleb changed again. Colder, distracted. We'd sit at dinner, and I'd ask about the seating chart, and he'd shrug. "Whatever you think is best." This from the man who spent 2 hours arguing that his cousin and my aunt shouldn't be at the same table because they're both chaos. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings, stopped sending little lunch break texts. When I asked if something was wrong, he snapped, "I'm fine, Haley. Not everything is about you." He blamed work. Understaffed office, 2 hygienists quitting, patients cranky, Dr. Palmer on his back about scheduling efficiency. All reasonable, all convenient. "I'm just exhausted," he said one night, curling up on the opposite end of the couch. "Wedding planning is overwhelming. I just need space to decompress." So I gave him space. I stopped asking questions, stopped nudging for affection. I told myself once the wedding was over, we'd go back to normal. Looking back, that space was probably when it happened, when he met up with Zoe. Tuesday afternoon, April 30th. I'm at my desk, drowning in shipment manifests for a major client. 3 containers inbound, 5 warehouses to coordinate, trucking schedules to sync, full brain work. My phone buzzes at 2:15 p.m. Text from Caleb. I expect something ordinary, a meme, a question about dinner, a reminder about some wedding payment. Instead, I see, "Baby, we need to talk tonight. Zoe's pregnant. She says she wants to put my name on the birth certificate. Says it's more meaningful." It felt like the floor fell out from under my chair. My pulse roared in my ears. I read the text again and again. Each time, the words stayed the same, but my world tilted further. Zoe, his ex-girlfriend. The girl from the stories about college. The one he'd supposedly closed the chapter on years ago. The one he'd mentioned in passing when we drove through a new development last fall. "Oh, funny, my ex Zoe bought a house somewhere around here with her husband," he'd said casually, waving a hand at a row of tidy 2-story homes. "Life's weird, right?" Back then it had felt like harmless trivia. Now it felt like a roadmap. My brain tried to make excuses. Maybe she was joking. Maybe he was oversharing someone else's drama. Maybe more meaningful meant something totally innocent. But then the real questions crashed in. Why was he even in contact with her? Why was he talking about her pregnancy in the kind of intimate, casual way you use for your own crisis? And why, in any universe, would Zoe want his name on the birth certificate instead of her husband's? Unless there was a reason. Unless there was a chance he was the father. My coworker at the next desk glanced over. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." "I need to step out," I muttered, standing too fast. My chair crashed into the wall, but I barely heard it. I walked straight to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just stared at that text until my phone screen dimmed and went black. When I woke it back up, the words hadn't changed. Zoe's pregnant. She wants my name on the birth certificate. More meaningful. My hands started shaking. Not with anger, not yet. With something worse. That cold, spiraling doubt that eats through every memory you thought was solid. What if he'd been cheating for months? What if the late nights and the extra drinks and the defensiveness had all been cover? What if my whole relationship, my wedding, my future, was built on top of a lie involving a baby that wasn't even mine to worry about? I backed out of the stall, splashed water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked calm. Dead calm. Like something inside had just snapped into focus. If I confronted Caleb now, he'd lie. He'd tell me I was crazy, that I misunderstood, that Zoe was exaggerating. He'd twist it. I needed someone who would panic if there was something to panic about. Someone who had as much to lose as I did. Someone married to Zoe. I grabbed my purse, my keys, walked back through the warehouse without even pretending to clock out. My supervisor called my name. I didn't answer. In the parking lot, I pulled up my Maps app and typed in the development Caleb had pointed to months before. Rows of beige siding and dark shutters appeared on the screen. 10 minutes later, I was on the highway, phone in the cup holder, Caleb's text glowing like a warning flare. 40 minutes of traffic and worst-case scenarios later, I pulled up across the street from a neat two-story with a blue sedan and a silver RAV4 in the driveway. Married couple cars. Perfect lawn. Picture book life. I sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. What was I doing? I was about to knock on the door of a man I'd never met and suggest his wife might be carrying my fiancé's baby. I took a breath. If I was wrong, I'd apologize and leave. If I was right, I killed the engine, walked up the path, and knocked 3 times. A man in his mid-30s opened the door. Tall, a little tired around the eyes, wearing a work polo. "Can I help you?" he asked, brows knitting. "Are you Ethan?" I asked. "Yes." I held up my phone so he could see the screen. "I'm Haley. I'm Caleb's fiancée," I said quietly, "and Zoe's ex-girlfriend just sent him this." I watched his face as he read. Confusion. Shock. Then a kind of hollow, fragile horror. "What?" His voice cracked. "Why would she say that?" "That," I replied, my own voice eerily steady, "is what I'm trying to find out." He swallowed hard, already reaching for his own phone. I need to call her," he said. "You'd better come in." As he stepped back to let me enter, one thought settled like ice in my chest. Whatever answer we got next, there was no going back. Ethan stared at my phone like it might explode in his hands. Then he turned away, jaw clenched, and hit a contact on his own screen. "Hey," he said when the call connected, voice deceptively calm. "You need to come home, now." I could faintly hear Zoe on the other end, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "No," he said. "It's urgent." She pushed back. He didn't explain. He just repeated, "Come home." Then he hung up and leaned his head against the doorframe for a second like he suddenly needed it to stay upright. "What exactly is going on?" I asked quietly. He looked at me with this awful mixture of embarrassment and fury. "I don't know," he said. "But if what you're implying is true, my whole marriage just blew up in the last 10 minutes. We sat in his living room, the air thick and hot despite the humming AC. Family photos lined the mantel, wedding day, vacations, candid selfies. I tried not to look too closely at Zoe's smiling face. My phone buzzed once in my hand. Caleb. I turned the screen face down. Ethan paced, checked the window, checked the clock, checked the door, as if any of those things would make time move faster. 15 minutes later, a car door slammed outside. We both looked up. The front door opened, and a woman stepped in. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, medical scrubs still on, keys dangling from her fingers. "Ethan," she called. "What's—" She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes flickered from my face to the ring on my finger, and then to my phone, still on the coffee table. A small, wary frown appeared. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice a shade too bright. "Zoe," Ethan said. His tone made her flinch. "This is Haley. She's Caleb's fiancée." The silence that followed felt like someone pressing a pillow over the room's mouth. I picked up my phone, woke the screen, and held it out. "He got this text from you today," I said. "Or at least, he says it's from you." She took the phone. I watched her face as she read. Her eyes skimmed the first line. Confusion. Second line. Her lips parted. Third line. The color drained from her cheeks. "She says she wants to put my name on the birth certificate. Says it's more meaningful." The words looked uglier reflected in her expression than they had on my screen. "Zoe," Ethan said slowly, "what does this mean?" She handed my phone back without meeting my eyes. "It's taken out of context." "Try me," I said. She finally looked at me, then at Ethan, then back at me. Guilt flashed for just a second before she masked it with practiced calm. "Caleb and I," she started. Ethan cut in. "You told me you hadn't talked to him in years." Her mouth snapped shut. He took a step closer. 2 months ago, I saw a text on your phone. Thanks for last night. See. Remember? You said it was your coworker, Chris. It was. It wasn't, he said, voice shaking now. Was it? Her shoulders dropped, the fight draining out of her. It was Caleb, she whispered. The room spun a little around the edges. I held onto the back of the couch to keep my knees from giving out. So you lied, Ethan said. You saw him when? 3 weeks ago, she admitted. He called out of nowhere, said he needed closure, that he felt bad about how things ended. I wanted to hear him out. And then? I asked, even though I already knew. Her eyes filled with tears she seemed more annoyed about than remorseful. We met for coffee, she said. We talked. It got emotional. One thing led to another. It was a mistake. One thing led to another, I repeated hollowly. That's how you describe sleeping with my fiancé? It was one time. The words sounded small, pathetic. It didn't mean anything. Ethan laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You're pregnant, he said. It meant something. Zoe's hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach. Or maybe that was my imagination, desperate for physical proof. How far along? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know exactly, she said. I just found out last week. Who's the father? Ethan demanded. She looked genuinely panicked now. You! Probably you. We've been... Probably, I cut in. You're texting my fiancé about putting his name on the birth certificate because it's more meaningful, and your answer is probably? Her eyes snapped to mine, defensive. You don't understand. Caleb and I, we have history. Years. You're new. New. 3 years engaged, deposits down on a wedding, a life intertwined, and in her mind, I was just new. Okay, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. We're not doing this vague emotional triangle thing. If there are 2 possible fathers, then we're getting a paternity test. Now. Ethan nodded, almost grateful to have concrete instructions. Agreed. Zoe looked between us like a trapped animal. Can't we just... No, I said. We can't just anything. Either Caleb is the father or Ethan is. We're not guessing. We're not waiting 9 months to make speeches about what feels right. We're getting facts. I pulled my phone out again and searched for prenatal paternity clinics in the area. One popped up 15 minutes away, offering same-day appointments. I'll pay for the expedited results, I said, more to myself than to them. He doesn't get to stall this. I dialed the clinic, my voice oddly calm as I explained we had a pregnant woman and 2 potential fathers and needed prenatal testing as soon as possible. They could see us in an hour. Perfect. Now came the fun part. I scrolled to Caleb's contact and hit call. He picked up on the second ring, sounding annoyingly cheerful. Hey, babe, I was just about to text. I'm at Zoe's house, I interrupted. Silence. With her husband, I added. We've all seen your little text about the birth certificate. We're going to a paternity clinic in an hour. You're meeting us there. Haley, wait, I can explain, he said quickly. It's not what it looks like. My laugh came out sharp and humorless. Are you going to tell me Zoe hacked your phone and wrote about wanting your name on her baby's paperwork as a prank? It was one mistake, he said. We were both emotional. So you admit it, I said. You slept with her. Another weighted pause. I could practically feel him calculating which lie might hurt less. Yes, he said finally, voice small. Once. It didn't mean anything. I panicked when she texted about the baby. I didn't know how to tell you. That's what I was trying to do. By saying your name was more meaningful than her husband's, I asked. Interesting delivery. Haley, please, can we just talk in person? Don't drag other people into this. Too late, I said. Everyone's already here. You have 1 hour to get to the clinic I'm about to text you. If you don't show, I start making decisions without you, and I promise you're not going to like any of them. He tried again, pleaded, blamed stress, childhood trauma, fate, whatever he thought might stick. I ended the call and texted him the clinic address. Then I turned back to Zoe and Ethan. Get in the car, I said. We're done guessing. The drive to the clinic felt like sitting in the eye of a hurricane. The wind was gone, but debris spun all around me. In my rearview mirror, I could see Zoe and Ethan in their SUV behind me, silhouettes locked in what looked like the fight of their marriage. At the clinic, the waiting room was neutral and bland. Muted art, outdated magazines, the kind of place designed to make you forget your life is currently imploding. The receptionist didn't blink when I said, prenatal paternity test, 2 alleged fathers. They took Zoe back first, explaining they'd need blood from her, then cheek swabs from both potential fathers. Results in 3 to 5 business days, expedited delivery available for an extra $400. I'll pay it, I said immediately, pulling out my card. Caleb arrived 10 minutes later, out of breath, hair messy, like he'd been running his hands through it nonstop. He reached for me on reflex. Haley! I stepped back. Don't touch me. Baby, I am so sorry, he started. It was a stupid, drunk mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. You mean everything. We can get through this. We just have to. You're going to swab your cheek when they call you, I said. You're going to cooperate. Then I'm going to go home and handle the rest of my life like you don't exist until I get an email telling me whether or not you've managed to ruin it permanently. He flinched. Can we at least talk? Just us? He begged. You have to understand, Zoe and I had your chance, I said. You chose closure with your ex over honesty with your fiancé. That was your decision. This is mine. The nurse called his name. He went. Zoe emerged from the back, eyes red, clutching the crook of her arm where they'd drawn blood. Ethan stood in the corner, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders stiff. None of us spoke. When Caleb was done, I signed the paperwork authorizing the expedited processing. Then I walked out without saying goodbye. The moment I got home, I went straight to the spare room. White boxes stacked in neat towers, mason jars and fake greenery and delicate fairy lights, printed seating charts pinned to corkboards, the veil hanging on a garment rack like a ghost of the life I thought I was about to walk into. I stared at it all for exactly 10 seconds. Then I picked up my phone. First call, the venue. I need to cancel our booking for May 14th, I said. The coordinator sounded sympathetic but firm. I'm so sorry to hear that. With less than 30 days' notice, the deposit is non-refundable. Understood, I said. Cancel anyway. $3,500 gone. Next call, the caterer. Same story. $2,800 vanished. The DJ was kinder, returning half the $800. The photographer, bless her, refunded the full $1,500 after I bluntly told her my fiancé had gotten someone else pregnant. By the time I hung up with her, I had a rough tally. Total put down, $14,800. Total recovered, $1,900. Net loss, $12,900. I opened my laptop and made a spreadsheet. Vendor names, amounts paid, amounts lost. Not because I'm a masochist, but because I needed a number. A target. Caleb was going to pay every cent of that target back. My phone vibrated nonstop. Calls, texts, missed video chat attempts. Caleb, his mother, unknown numbers. I silenced it and dialed one person instead. Troy. He picked up on the first ring. Hey, what's... Caleb cheated with his ex, I said. She's pregnant. We did a test today. There was a long pause on his end. Holy, he cut himself off, then said, Are you serious? Dead serious. Haley, I'm so sorry. The wedding's canceled, I said. I just lit almost $13,000 on fire. That money's not gone, he said immediately. It's on Caleb's tab now. That's the plan, I said, staring at the spreadsheet. If the baby's his, he's paying me back every penny. I don't care if he has to sell organs. Troy let out a low whistle. Savage. Proud of you. We talked logistics, then nothing, then logistics again. He offered to come over, to bring food, to sit with me while I stared at my new future. I'm okay, I lied. I have a date with an Excel sheet and some rage. He snorted. Text me when you get the results, yeah? Yeah, I said, even though my stomach flipped at the thought. 3 days later, on a gray Friday morning, I sat at my desk at work, the warehouse hum muted behind my office door. My email pinged. Subject line, paternity results. Confidential. My hand hovered over the mouse. I clicked. The email unfolded on my screen like a slow-motion car crash. Alleged father 1, Ethan, 0% probability. Alleged father 2, Caleb Morris, 99.99% probability. There it was. Cold, clinical, irrefutable. A scientific confirmation that my fiancé, the man I loved, lived with, planned a wedding with, had gotten his ex-girlfriend pregnant 3 weeks before our wedding. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, then snapped into terrifying clarity. My hands weren't shaking. I felt nothing. Just a clean, precise emptiness. Then I hit forward. To Caleb, to Zoe, to Ethan. No message, just the attachment. Then I sat back and waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. Caleb called within 30 seconds. His name lit up my phone like a siren. I let it ring until voicemail. He called again. And again. On the 4th try, I answered. Haley, he sobbed, voice wrecked. Oh my God, please, just talk to me. The baby isn't mine, I said. My voice was steady enough to frighten even me. I know what it looks like, he said, but we can work through this. I love you. You're my person. That night was a mistake, but it doesn't have to end us. It absolutely ends us, I said. It ends everything. He made a choked noise. Haley, please, don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just tell me what you want. I'll do anything. You already know what I want, I said. I told you 3 days ago. What do you mean? I want every dollar I spent on the wedding, all 14,800. I've already recovered 1,900. You owe me $12,900. You have 30 days. I don't have that kind of money, he cried. My savings are nothing, my car lease, student loans. Haley, I can't just pull that out of thin air. Then borrow it, I said coldly. Sell something. Ask your parents. Pick up double shifts. I don't care how you get it. You're paying me back. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed sharply. You cheated on me. You got someone else pregnant. You made me cancel our wedding and set fire to $13,000 because you couldn't keep it in your pants. And you want to talk about fair? He had no answer. Goodbye, Caleb, I said, for the last time. I hung up and blocked his number. 2 hours later, a stranger called. I answered because I felt like punishing myself. Is this Haley Grant? A woman asked sharply. Yes. This is Zoe's mother. Of course it was. I want you to know, she began, with the confidence of a woman who always gets her way, that my daughter is devastated and Caleb is stepping up. They plan to co-parent responsibly. That's their business, I said, not mine. Well, actually, it is yours, she insisted. This situation involves you, and we should all sit down as adults to discuss how to support the baby. I laughed out loud. Ma'am, I said, that baby has nothing to do with me. Your daughter and my ex-fiancé created this disaster together. They can fix it together. I'm done. But surely you still care about Caleb. I don't, I said. Not anymore. I hung up, blocked her too. That night, I sent a text to everyone involved in wedding planning. Our families, the bridal party, his side, mine. Family meeting. My parents' house. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. mandatory. Caleb's mom called immediately. What's going on? She demanded, panic coloring her voice. You'll see, I said, then hung up. The next day, I arrived early. Laid out printed copies of the paternity test on my parents' dining table. Set up my laptop with a neat slide of expenses. Deposits paid, deposits lost, total owed. My parents hovered nearby, tense but supportive. They knew the outline, but not the details. They didn't ask questions. They knew I'd tell them when I was ready. Family members trickled in, confusion thick in the room. Caleb's parents, his sister, my siblings, a few bridesmaids, a few groomsmen. Everyone murmured, worried and curious. Then the front door opened again. Caleb walked in with his parents behind him. His eyes were swollen, face blotchy. He looked smaller somehow. Behind him, his sister gave me a dirty look, like I was the one who had detonated the bomb. Finally, Zoe's parents stepped through the doorway, awkward, tense, clearly dragged here by guilt and obligation. And then Zoe herself appeared, wearing an oversized hoodie and looking like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. When everyone was seated, my dad cleared his throat and said quietly, Haley has something to share. I stood. The room quieted instantly. I picked up one sheet of paper and held it up. This, I said, is the reason the wedding is canceled. I handed the first page to Caleb's mother. She read the heading. Her face collapsed. Oh my God, she whispered. The paper passed hand to hand. Faces paled, eyes widened. Whispers started, then died. When everyone had a copy, I spoke. 2 weeks before the wedding, I said, Caleb received a text from his ex-girlfriend, Zoe. She's pregnant. Shock rippled through the room, but I raised my hand to stop the questions. I confronted Zoe and her husband. They admitted Caleb and Zoe slept together 3 weeks ago. A harsh gasp came from Caleb's mother. Caleb's father pinched the bridge of his nose. My mother covered her mouth. Caleb stared at the floor. And as you can see, I said, tapping the paper lightly, a prenatal paternity test confirmed Caleb is the father, with 99.99% probability. Zoe's father sank into his chair like he'd been shot. Zoe's mother closed her eyes, shaking. Zoe herself just cried silently. Caleb's sister stood abruptly. Haley, this is cruel. You didn't have to humiliate everyone. People make mistakes. Some mistakes, I said evenly, come with consequences. This is one of them. You're heartless, she snapped. No, I said, I'm honest. I let that sit. Then I opened my laptop and turned it so the group could see. This is what I paid for the wedding, I said. Deposits, vendors, everything that can't be refunded. Total loss, $12,900. Caleb is paying me back, every penny. Caleb's father swallowed hard. Haley, we don't have that kind of money. Then Caleb will figure it out, I said. He caused the damage. He pays for the damage. I looked at Caleb for the first time during the meeting. He flinched. You should be grateful, I said. If we had married and I discovered later that the baby wasn't mine, I could have pursued paternity fraud charges. I'm choosing not to. That shut the whole room up. Zoe sobbed harder. Caleb's mother looked mortified. My mother looked proud and devastated at the same time. Meeting's over, I said. People left in stunned silence, some ashamed, some crying, some glancing at me like they weren't sure whether to pity me or fear me. Caleb tried to approach me. I stepped back. Don't, I said. He stopped. His face crumbled. But I didn't care. Not anymore. Word spread fast. By Monday morning, the entire friend group knew everything. Screenshots circulated. Group chats exploded. Caleb tried to post vague inspirational quotes about forgiveness. Troy dismantled him with a single comment. Forgiveness isn't owed to men who cheat and impregnate their ex 3 weeks before their wedding. Caleb deleted the post. Zoe shut down all her social media. Their families scrambled to save face. And me? I waited, because I knew what was coming next. And sure enough, on Thursday morning, a certified envelope arrived from Caleb's parents. A check for $5,000 and a handwritten note. This is all we can manage right now. The rest will come in monthly payments. We are deeply sorry for our son's behavior. You didn't deserve this. Michael and Rachel. I sat at my kitchen island, holding the check between my fingers, and realized something. This wasn't vengeance. This wasn't petty. This was closure. Real, tangible financial closure. And I wasn't even close to done healing yet. The ink on the $5,000 check was barely dry when I drafted the repayment contract. I wrote it like a business agreement. Clean, factual, emotionless. $12,900 total owed. $5,000 paid up front. $7,900 remaining. $400 monthly installments. Interest penalty for late payments. Certified mail signatures required. I mailed it to Caleb's parents. They signed it within 48 hours and mailed it back without a single note. Humiliation must be a powerful motivator. Once their check cleared, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph. Just release. Like a rope that had been holding my ribs too tight had finally snapped. The next weeks were a blur of administrative untangling. Ending a wedding wasn't as simple as canceling a party. It was like performing emotional surgery. I removed Caleb from every emergency contact form, updated my life insurance beneficiaries, removed him from streaming accounts, utilities, Wi-Fi, boxed up his leftover things, shirts, shoes, a weirdly expensive hair clay, his old gaming headset. I put everything into neat cardboard boxes and drove them to his parents' house one Saturday afternoon. Michael opened the door. He looked older than I remembered, tired around the eyes in a way that felt permanent. I'll take these, he said quietly. Thanks, I replied. He lingered a second before speaking. Haley, I want you to know we raised Caleb better than this. His voice cracked. We don't know what happened to him, or why he made such a terrible choice. I nodded. I know this hasn't been easy on you and Rachel either. He's not doing well, Michael admitted. He keeps talking like he's the victim, keeps saying you're punishing him. I let out a slow breath. Consequences aren't punishment, they're reality. Michael gave a weary smile. I said the same thing. He stepped back. You're a good woman. You'll land on your feet. Our son, he looked away. He has a lot of growing up to do. Then he closed the door. And just like that, the last physical trace of Caleb left my life. A few days later, an unfamiliar number texted me. This is Ethan, Zoe's, ex-husband now. I just wanted to thank you. You saved me years of being lied to. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. We were both cheated on the same way. We both deserved better. Good luck with the divorce. He sent a single thumbs-up emoji. It was oddly comforting. Two strangers standing in the rubble left by the same bomb. That week, I scheduled full STD testing at a clinic. Sitting in that waiting room was humiliating, explaining to the nurse that I thought I was in a monogamous relationship but apparently wasn't. How many partners have you had in the past year? She asked without looking up. I thought one, I said. Turns out it was, at least 2. She paused long enough to give me a soft, sympathetic look. I'm sorry. We see this more than you'd think. Thankfully, the results came back clean 3 days later. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both. The next few weeks were quiet, slow, strange, like emerging from a storm shelter and waiting to see if the tornado really passed. I went to work, hit the gym, cooked more, went out with friends Troy had forcibly recruited to get me out of the house. even picked up a new project at work, one complicated enough that it pulled me fully into logistics spreadsheets and away from intrusive thoughts. 2 weeks later, my boss called me into his office. "You landed that major client," he said with a grin. "We're giving you a raise." It wasn't dramatic, a few thousand more per year, but it felt symbolic. My life was rebuilding itself, brick by brick. Then came the final payment from Caleb's parents. $7,900, paid in full. A neat little envelope that represented the exact price of my heartbreak. I deposited it without ceremony. Just another transaction. And I realized I didn't feel anything anymore. Not anger, not grief, not satisfaction. Just peace. Real, quiet peace. 6 months passed. I moved into a new apartment downtown with a better view and fewer ghosts. Started dating casually, slowly, intentionally. Nothing serious. I wasn't in a hurry anymore. I had learned my lesson about ignoring red flags, about over-investing in someone who wasn't investing back, about trusting without verifying. Troy joked that I had developed the emotional perimeter security of the Pentagon. He wasn't wrong. One rainy Tuesday evening, I ran into Zoe at Target. She was very visibly pregnant now, belly round and taut, her face exhausted. She wore old leggings and a stretched-out sweater, her hair in a messy bun. Messy. We made eye contact across the aisle. She froze. I didn't. I walked right past her. She opened her mouth as if to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, maybe to rewrite history. But I kept walking. There was nothing she could say that would matter. A week later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Caleb was paying child support, but only the bare minimum the court mandated. He and Zoe weren't dating. They weren't even speaking outside necessary exchanges. Zoe had moved back in with her parents, working part-time appointments around her pregnancy. Caleb's reputation had taken a nosedive among friends and coworkers. His sister, who once called me cruel, had since blocked half her own friends because they defended me. It sounded like everyone was living inside the consequences they created, as it should be. 3 weeks ago, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Haley, it's Caleb. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the message for 3 seconds. Then I blocked the number. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some people only say sorry when they realize their actions come with a price. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Mine had already burned, clean and bright, and I wasn't looking back.